Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be looking back on what could have been a shock Formula One win. There have been a few races in Formula One's history that have been famous for nearly having a shock win, and probably the two most famous of these are Ivan Capelli nearly winning the 1990 French Grand Prix in a Leighton house, and Damon Hill almost winning the 1997 Hungarian Grand Prix in Arrows. However, there are quite a few other near misses in the sport's history, or races in which it looked like someone had a chance to pull off a shocker, and the one we're focusing on today is just the fifth race in the history of the World Championship. That race is the 1950 Belgian Grand Prix, and the driver is Raymond Sommer, who is driving a private Talbot. Before getting into the details though, if you enjoyed the video, then please give it a like and share the video, and if you want to see more similar content, then you can subscribe to the channel. Before getting into the actual race, I first want to go over just how much of a shock a win like this could have been. The first World Championship in 1950 was dominated by Alfa Romeo, and particularly their two lead drivers Giuseppe Farina and Juan Manuel Fangio. Excluding the Indianapolis 500, which the Formula One teams didn't participate in, Alfa won all 6 of the races, took all 6 poles, and also all 6 fastest laps. They also took a total of 12 podiums compared to Ferrari, who took the next most at 3, and led 384 of the season's 391 laps. That percentage of 98.2% of the season's laps led remains the highest in Formula One history, even ahead of the 97.3% the dominant McLaren of 1988 led. Talbot, on the other hand, competed for best of the rest with Ferrari throughout the year, although Ferrari certainly seemed to have the edge on pace. Louis Rosier had some solid performances during the year for Talbot, scoring 2 podiums and scoring 13 points, which placed him 4th in the championship, which was the highest placed non-Alfa Romeo car. However, at no point did it look like Talbot could even think about challenging Alfa Romeo. That is except for this one day in Belgium. By 1950, Raymond Sommer had a career dating back about 20 years already, and had seen some success at times, most notably winning the 24 Hours of Le Mans in back-to-back years in 1932 and 1933. His success in Grand Prix cars didn't quite match that, but most of that was due to him running private cars quite a bit through the 30s and 40s. By the time Belgium came around, he had already participated in 2 World Championship Grand Prix in Monaco and Switzerland, both of which he drove for the factory Ferrari team. In Monaco, he qualified 9th and finished 4th, and in Switzerland, he qualified 13th and retired from the race. In Belgium, though, he was competing in a private Talbot. The race was at the old version of Spa that was almost 9 miles long, or 14 kilometers, and consisted of numerous long straights, meaning that power was very important. While we don't have exact numbers for the top speed of the cars, it was suggested that Sommer's Talbot would have had a top speed of about 30 miles per hour slower than the Alfa Romeos, so when you consider that, it makes it very unlikely that Sommer would be able to be competitive. Despite this, Sommer qualified a solid 5th in the 14-car field, matching the time of the Ferrari of Luigi Villoresi, who qualified in 4th, and was faster than any of the factory Talbot cars, as well as 5 seconds faster than the Ferrari of Alberto Ascari. While that all sounds great, he was also 10 seconds off the time set by Farina and Fangio, who would be starting 1st and 2nd, and also 6 seconds off the 3rd Alfa of Luigi Fagioli, who would be starting in 3rd. While this was still a very solid qualifying, it once again shows just how much of an edge the Alfas had over the field in 1950. Considering all this, there is surely no chance that Sommer or anyone else could even think about fighting the Alfas unless they ran into trouble, but there is one element Sommer thought about that might perhaps give him a chance. The Alfas used a supercharged engine which was heavy on fuel, and because of this they would have to make 2 pit stops for fuel in the 35-lap race. Sommer's Talbot, on the other hand, had a normally aspirated engine that was more fuel efficient, and he would be able to go through the race without having to make any pit stops. Obviously, pit stops were a lot longer back in 1950 than they are today, and it was also a lot more likely that something could go wrong. In 1999, Motorsport magazine ran an article in which they talked with Jeffrey Crossley, who was also competing in the race, about a conversation he had with Sommer the day before it. In the article, Crossley stated that Sommer had told him that his plan was to do his best to keep as close as possible to the Alfas in the early stages of the race, and hoped that it would allow him to take the lead when they had pitted, and perhaps even keep it as the race went on. While Sommer's plan may have sounded fine on paper, if he was anything like the 10 seconds a lap he was slower in qualifying, executing the plan certainly sounds quite far-fetched. Sommer dropped from 5th to 6th at the start, losing a place to Ascari, but Ascari would suffer from a puncture a couple laps in, promoting Sommer back to 5th. Surprisingly, though, Sommer was able to stay with Villoresi, and on lap 8 into Bournonville, Sommer was able to make a move by the Ferrari to move up into 4th, only behind the 3 Alfas. On lap 11, Fangio, who was running in 2nd, became the first Alfa to pit and came out behind Sommer, while the leader Farina pitted on the next lap, and on the lap after that, the final Alfa of Fagioli pitted. With all 3 Alfas making a stop and Sommer not pitting as planned, he was now in the lead to the shock of pretty much everyone, and for the first time it looked as if Alfa may have a challenge on their hands. In fact, Alfa was so surprised that they went to the timekeepers to try and convince them that Sommer was actually a lap down and not in the lead of the race. The Alfas were still the quicker car though, and on lap 18, after leading for 5 laps, both Farina and Fangio passed Sommer, dropping him to 3rd, but he still had a chance. It had taken Fangio 7 laps to catch him and Farina 6, and they both still had to make another pit stop so Sommer would gain the lead back again. However, 3 laps later on lap 21, Sommer lost power and was forced to retire from the race, ending his chance of a potential win or at least a solid result. The Alfa cars pitted from laps 23 to 25, but with no more challengers, they were able to retain the lead easily. Fangio would go on to win the race, while Farina ran into transmission troubles late, dropping him to 4th, leaving Fagioli to take 2nd, while the Talbot of Rosier finished 3rd. Is it possible Sommer actually could have won that day, though? Well, it's hard to give an answer for sure. It's hard to find detailed reports on this race, and even what we have lacks timings to fully understand the gaps and what the exact pace difference between the cars were. What we do know is that the Alfas couldn't build up a pit stop buffer over Sommer over the opening stint of the race that lasted between 11 and 13 laps depending on the driver, and Farina and Fangio would have pitted about 5 and 6 laps after taking the lead back from him on lap 18, which was about half a stint. Therefore, I think it's safe to assume that Sommer would have gotten the lead back at this point. This would give them about 11 laps to catch and pass him for the win, but they would theoretically have a larger gap to make up than they did the first time, as they would only have had half the time to open up a lead as they did in the opening stint. With Sommer being seen as a realistic threat, it also could have put more pressure on Alfa during the pit stops as well, so a mistake from them may have been more likely. However, since they see him as a threat, it also could lead to the Alfa drivers pushing harder, making them gain more time each lap. I think it would have been close, but if I had to predict, my guess is that Fangio would pull it off, probably passing Sommer with 2 or 3 laps to go, but again, this is just a guess based on what little evidence we have. What we do know, though, is that Sommer accomplished something that day that was probably seen as impossible, and that was to realistically challenge an Alfa Romeo and a Talbot. Even if Sommer lost the lead with a few laps to go and finished on the podium, it would have been a drive worth remembering. Had he held on for the win, then I think it would still probably be the biggest upset in World Championship history, as he would have flat out beat Fangio in an Alfa and not taken advantage of other cars retiring. Sommer would work some magic in his Talbot later in the year at Monza, running as high as 4th before retiring there, and just a week after that he died in a racing accident, ending any chance to see more magical moments from him. Enzo Ferrari was reportedly so impressed by what Sommer did that day that he abandoned developing a supercharged engine and instead developed a normally aspirated engine that is more fuel efficient to take the fight to Alfa Romeo with. Come 1951, the normally aspirated Ferrari pushed Alfa Romeo to the limit, with Fangio narrowly beating out Ascari for the title in the final race. So that's all I have for this. Let me know what you think of this drive for Sommer. Do you think he could have actually pulled off a win here, or do you think that Fangio would have had enough to pass him by at the end of the race? Also, had Sommer pulled the win off, where would you rank it among surprise wins in Formula One history? Thanks for watching.